Okay, everyone. Welcome to the AP Computer Science Principles webinar. My name is Joseph Wilson. I go by Joey. I work for CS for All Teachers and the American Institutes for Research. I'm based in the Bay Area, so I happen to be at Berkeley today. So that's why I'm sitting outside. I attended and I took part in many AP Computer Science courses. So I was a part of AP CSA and AP CSAB when that existed when I was in high school. And so I'm really excited to introduce the host and moderator for today, and that's Deepa. And so with that, I will hand it over to Deepa. Thank you so much.
Hi, everybody. My name is Deepa Muraladhar, and I welcome you to the this year's 2017-2018 series of APCS Principles webinars. This is our third year offering these webinars and second year of offering the APCS Principles one. And as we all know, it's getting even more exciting and interesting as we teach these to our students, and our students bring in these new questions. Anybody who's been on either the College Board Forum or on the Facebook discussion board, there is 3 questions every day that has never been asked before that everybody is asking. So today I'm really excited to bring the topic of what is a computing innovation, or what innovations can students use for the Explore performance task that would help them score well, that are good innovations in the sense that they help students answer the prompts very successfully. To join us and help us make this discussion fruitful and useful so that we have something to take back, we have Justin Kennedy and Dr. Jeff Gray. In a minute, I will introduce you to them, but I just wanted to just say a word about myself. I've done these webinars for 3 years now, and each year it gets very, very exciting and interesting, and I'm really, really grateful to AIR for being our host and being such a valuable tool for the computer science education community. I am a teacher. I teach at Roswell, Georgia in Atlanta, and I'm a CSTA member and a College Board consultant doing various work for College Board by way of APCS Principles and APCSA. First, I'd like to introduce Justin Kennedy, who is here. He was a high school teacher for 8 years, and this is the first year he has not been in the classroom, but he is doing incredible, useful work with UTeach at University of Austin, Texas. Justin, if you would like to tell us a few words about the work that you're doing and the absolute exciting work that you did for us with the CS for Alabama, the floor is yours.
Justin, are you there?
Okay. Unless he's muted, it may be that he lost connection. I'm going to move on to Jeff Gray for a second and then come back to Justin. It frequently happens when you use the webcam. We eat up so much bandwidth. It's an innovation. It's an innovation in progress, right? And, you know, we all know that we have these computers and they help us so much, but they can also come back to be there some challenges. So I would like to go ahead and introduce Jeff Gray. And Dr. Jeff Gray is a professor in the University of Alabama. I've known Jeff for, I don't know, now it's been 6 or 8 years. And I'm extremely honored to be able to introduce Dr. Jeff Gray to this, into this webinar. Jeff has been involved with APCS principles when there was no AP and we were just conceiving the idea, and has been teaching it in his college-level students for many, many years. He's also been a pioneer in the state of Alabama in teaching teachers APCS principles and training them to be able to teach and be successful in the classroom. That this is the real truth. And Jeff has gotten so many valuable grants for the teachers in Alabama that some of our national level College Board consultants have sprung from Jeff Gray's training workshops at the University of Alabama. So Jeff, the floor is yours.
Hi everyone, can you hear me okay? Okay, I think I hear an echo,
Yes.
and I'm not sure my camera's not working, so I apologize for that. So thanks to Deepa for the invitation and for this opportunity to talk with everybody, and for Joey for helping out with the connections. I see on the panelists, or on the attendees list, I see some familiar names, so great to see some folks there that we've been working with for a while. I'm just excited to chat with you all about CS principles. There's so much collective knowledge that I'm sure the participants on here all have that I'm looking forward to learning a few things myself from the things that you all shared. So my main work has been doing CS principles at the higher ed level and offering a course, one of the pilots, and also helping with some of the teacher professional development across my state. And the newest thing we're working on is working with College of Education at my university to be able to create a pathway so that secondary math ed students who will be future math teachers will be able to have the knowledge of CS principles to introduce that into their future class.
Hey guys, I'm back. I had a power issue.
Great. And Justin,
can you hear me now?
Are you back on?
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. Good. Sorry about that. My power blinked. Weirdly enough, when Deepa was about to introduce me, or I guess give the floor over to me.
Okay. While we try and wait for a few minutes for Justin, I know that I'm having some difficulty here myself connection on, and I've been having multiple ways to get on so that I don't lose connectivity. So I totally understand what's happening. But any questions, any concerns? Somebody says they hear Justin. Can you guys hear him?
Okay. Yeah. Okay. So Deepa, can you hear me?
Okay. So only I can't hear him? Okay. So only I can't hear him?
Oh, you can't hear me either.
Okay, Justin. Justin, wait.
How about this? Can you hear me now?
Well, I'm glad I have a nice echo. I don't know what to say. Okay, I'm going to try and, so you hear Jeff and Justin, Chinna. That's awesome. And I'm sorry that I have an echo. I'm going to go ahead. Joey, looks like I've lost access to the ability to move through slides. Would you be able to give that back to me, sir?
Yep, doing it right now.
Antoine. Great. Okay.
Could all the other participants use their microphones?
Yeah. Hello?
I'm hearing a deep echo.
Okay. So as we, I guess try to figure out Justin's, so you guys can hear
Hey,
Justin.
let me try one more time.
And we
can you hear me now?
That seems a little bit odd.
Okay, go ahead.
Oh, there, Justin. Hi. We hear you. Great. All right.
Again,
welcome
sorry.
aboard.
I just said welcome aboard.
Okay.
I just said welcome aboard.
Just quick intro. I know I missed it, but you already talked about it. You teach but I was one teacher in the classroom, pilot read last year for the exam, was with Dr. Gray when he was bringing all of us up in Alabama, and I was cohort 2 with them. So it's exciting to see how far we've come and then how far we've come as a community, really and truly. So I'm excited to talk tonight and hopefully clear up some questions that you guys have.
Great. Thank you, Justin.
Great. Thank you, Justin. I will tell you, and I'm really sorry for the echo, folks. I'm not sure. We actually tried figuring that out.
Hello, can you guys hear me?
Hello, can you guys hear me?
Okay, now I can hear myself.
Okay.
All right.
Okay, now I can hear myself. All right, I'm going to go through. I'm so sorry for the noise. I have no idea where it's coming from. But here on to the first slide.
Yep.
Hello?
Oh, not lately. That was the last one.
Okay, so how do you define a computing innovation? So there has been a lot of conversation on what would be a computing innovation. In fact, if you want to have a good discussion and get 4 people totally super excited in a conference in a room, the best one is to throw a question like this: is what is this computing innovation and explore task? And everybody starts having an opinion. Justin, can we have you start the webinar, sir, with your thoughts on how would we define a computing innovation?
So I always kind of defer to College Board with what they classify, because obviously they're the ones that have created this course and they're the ones that have created the test. And so sticking by their guidance is, I think, the best policy. And they define it in the Purple Book as a computing innovation is an
Hey everyone, we're trying to fix this. Apologize for it.
Can you guys hear me? Okay, so I'm going to just stop for a second here. John was just saying that they had a reader come and even there the teachers had disagreement. It is really true. And that's why I think Justin's point is really well taken, is we need to really see, ultimately the AEC exam is going to be graded by folks who are hired by College Board. So thinking about a computing innovation and what it says in the curriculum framework is a computing innovation is something that has code associated or an algorithm associated with it, right? And so the point, Patrick, is that a computing innovation is something that uses or has computing code that's inherent to it. It could be in form of embedded code. It could be in form of, actual live code or software, but it has something to be code to it. So I would think that's what he was just getting ready to code out of the framework. And so when we get him back, I'm sure we will request him to do that. Jeff, your thoughts on this at this point about what do you think a computing innovation is?
Yeah, I think the thing that students need to be aware of are general technology innovations that seem flashy and exciting to them, but lack that underlying computation or algorithmic piece. So that involves the computational part, the algorithmic part. So there's maybe some code involved. It might not just be hardware. So picking something that is just pretty much a flashy kind of hardware example where you can't identify the algorithmic part and then the data that it uses, and so if you think about data as consuming, or as an innovation is consuming and producing data, it's that transformation part. What is it doing to the data that it consumes and then produces, and if that can't be identified, then it might not be a very good computing innovation. So I think that part's of tying it to a direct computational process.
Right. Moving to the next question. You were just talking about data, Jeff, about computing innovations that help write about data. The other problem that I want to mention about that also is equally significant is the benefit and the harm. Justin, I'm not sure if you're online. Please do let us know as soon as you come online. But at this point, Jeff, any ideas on what computing innovations you would consider as ones that are good candidates for this?
Yeah, so I think if you go back to the purpose of CS principles and providing a way for students to make a connection to computing in their lives, the thing that I think would be a primary thing, and it's not technical or anything at all, it's just does that the computing innovation that the student pick have a deep connection to some hobby, interest, or personal connection to the student, because it could be the best example that we could come up with for a computing innovation, but if it's not of interest to that particular student who's doing the performance task, then that student's going to not have a deep interest and the passion to pursue it. So I think that would be the number one thing I would say that's not even related to anything technical. And then the technical parts would be going back to the prompts that they're going to have to respond to. Can the student, from the computing innovation that they pick, can they identify themselves some of the data aspects of the innovation? What is the input or the consumed data, the produced data, and what kind of transforms can the student identify? And is it an innovation that the student can clearly understand the function themselves? So identifiable. So the passion of the project, the technical things of identifying things. Can the students also, for example, is it clear to them which particular groups are impacted positively or negatively, so that they'll be able to help answer those prompts on those topics as well. And other things like the data storage, privacy, or security concerns, are those clear? So leading then into that, the other part of can the student find enough published references? So those are things that are all helping to drive the written responses. And does a student have enough knowledge of the innovation that they picked to be able to find the location and information to answer those prompts? So the passion question that drives CS principles, followed by the technical things that are going to help them answer those questions, and whether they can even identify that as a computing innovation, I think, are the clear things.
Can you guys hear me? Yes.
Great. Perfectly, Jeff. Thank you. Justin's back. Justin, the audience were very curious to hear the formal definition of College of Computing Innovation. If you would please take and finish that before we go on to this. Thank you.
Yes, I'm sorry.
Glad to have you back.
I don't know what's going on, but we'll just run with the punches. Like I said, I go back to the framework. College Board says a computing innovation is an innovation that includes a program or a computer or program code as an integral part of functionality. So that's the bottom line definition, really and truly having the computer as the central point for the innovation. And so I was saying something about a toaster. A toaster is a technological innovation, kind of an old one, but it is still one. But most toasters don't drive on the purpose of having a computer inside doing things for them. So it wouldn't be a good computing innovation, especially not for this performance task.
Great. So that is thank you so much for that one, Justin, because there was a question right there that asked what would be a bad example of a computing innovation. One of my favorite ones is a tech T-shirt because it has the word tech on it. Those ones that you wear those performance T-shirts that you wear when you go for a jog, but they have nothing computing on them, right? So those would be very poor examples of a computing innovation. There was also somebody who mentioned the audience, which I would like to reiterate that Jeff mentioned about the data being consumed, produced, or transformed. It seems to me that those are the key things that will help identify if the computing innovation is a valid one. Because if the innovation is just a technology innovation but not in tech and computing, we still may be able to do the impact on society or benefits or harm. But the data piece, like Jeff said and somebody in the audience said, those are really, really hard. Any other examples, Jeff, that occurred to you that may be not a good topic to be used?
Deepa, can I come back to a question that was asked, or are we going to do that at the end?
Yes, please.
I'm seeing the question
right
about
ahead,
how
sir.
can a hobby be connected to a positive effect. The comment that I made is that not so much that the hobby be the positive effect. It was more that in order for the student to have passion about the actual innovation they pick, that it be tied to a hobby. So just as an example, I had a student who was in high school who came here as a freshman, and he loved baseball. So what he did is, this isn't an innovation he picked for a performance task. It's an app that he created. So he created an app where he would analyze baseball pitches. So there's all kinds of, he used OpenCV to track, visually the ball coming in, and he computed trajectories and things like that. So that was an example of a student who built an app based upon a passion he had. I think also for CS principals, students who have a certain, someone who likes sports, or someone who's in band, or someone who has some other hobby, if they pick a computing innovation in that field, that was kind of what I was referring to about a hobby. Not so much that it has a positive effect on the community. It was more about the passion and drive that the student would have in pursuing that topic.
So I would jump in on that one.
Thank you so much for bringing that.
I would jump in there also to keep in mind, because I keep saying well, what about a smart toaster? And these are the same things that kids ask. What about this? What about this? What about this? I've done in my classroom where I actually have my students do an assignment called Tech News. And it's basically current events with our spin on it, to have to bring in something about technology. And so the format that I give it to them in is they have the prompts from the Explore Performance task, but they cannot write over 2 sentences. So they have to be very consolidated and precise. And I have them do this once every 2 weeks. And so we bring them in, we take 30 minutes, they share. And what this does is it gives us an opportunity to discuss what innovations are technological in form, what are computational in form, and then also what innovations actually work. Yeah, 2 sentences per prompt. That's the max they can do. And so with this being the case, they kind of figure out on their own, oh, well, I did this and I wrote about the smart toaster, but in fact, that's not really a great question or a great innovation to use for this task. It may be a cool thing, or it may be a cool computing innovation, but it's not a a way for, you know, it to be successful for this task. And that's kind of the bottom line, is this is wanting to be successful for the task. The students can find places to get this innovation, to find what they want to do, but ultimately they're writing for a grade. So
Great. There are a couple of things that I want to quickly go on here because there are some fantastic questions that are being asked here. Nintendo Switch, Easy Pass, and cochlear implant, the transcendence of hearing aid, that which restores hearing. I'd like to talk about Jeff, Justin, any one of you, on the Easy Pass and the Nintendo Switch.
So
what are your thoughts? How good
I'd
are
love
they
to
is
have
the
a
question
Nintendo
on
Switch.
the audience.
So I tell the kids, yeah, come on, bring it in. Let's really, you could use that as a teachable moment. I was joking, but I do want a Nintendo Switch. You could have it as a teachable moment. Have them bring in their Switch and take the time and go through the prompts with them and say, okay, hey, well, you know, what kind of data does this produce? What kind of data does this consume? Is there a real benefit to society? Because that's the other thing, that you got to go abstract. And that's one thing on the Chief Reader Report that I heard a lot of people that graded the Explore PT. You have to go to the, how is this benefiting the world? Not just your household or yourself or just a few individuals. Let's break this down until we can find the absolute most. They joked, but why? But why? That's what they would say as they were reading that section of the prompt is, but why did you pick this? Or, but why does it do that? Why are you caring so much about that? So I'd say the Nintendo Switch probably is not going to be that great of a computational innovation unless it's explained really well. The benefit, harm, society, that's where I would probably lose some points. So
yeah, thank you, Justin. That is extremely well said, and leads on to the other question that was asked before we move to the next question. Is smart toaster. Jeff, maybe you'd like to pick on this one, sir. The question was, what would be the impact of a smart toaster? You know, if we have to answer that one, and again, as to larger impact over a smaller impact, or impact on society, economy, or culture, what would we say would be a valid answer?
Yeah, so you want to discuss the idea of a smart toaster. So you know, the input, the output, the transformation, what kind of feedback processes are happening algorithmically to make it smart, which would be the computational part. Personally, I think a smart toaster would not be a one that I would select personally, because I'm not sure how deep I could go in some of the questions in terms of privacy, data security, or storage. So some of those things are harder to do with a smart toaster, perhaps.
That's right. Absolutely. And I think I have somebody called Rebecca Lang saying the exact same things, is that what you're saying, Jeff, the benefits are much easier to state than the harm. And so what would be the harm of a smart toaster? How well can they answer the prompt? What would be the impact? Maybe that people become more smarter at using computers. Maybe we can time it. We can toast it perfectly, so people become more perfectionists. But even then, it has to be a direct harm. So this may not really have a very strong impact. And so your point is very well taken, that they may not have that, you know, when you reach that dead end with the student in a conversation, you finish up saying, maybe then we shouldn't go with the smart toaster since you can't answer this prompt, right? I think I'm going to hold off answering some of the questions and go to the next question so that we can get some more conversations going here. Justin, would you, you know, as a classroom teacher, as a PD provider right now, any suggestions on what kind of scaffolding activities would teachers give? What will help a student reach a task as big as an explore task?
And this actually will cover Nicole and Katie, your questions. So the Tech News assignments, that's what I use. Now, the biggest thing is the teacher cannot give feedback for students to use that feedback in the incorporation of their performance task. I really don't think there is a set amount of topics that the kids are going to run out of. I usually just persuade them to go to like Flipboard or Google Tech News or whatever. Pick the first thing you see and write about it. Like, well, I don't care about that. And it's like, well, it doesn't really matter. You're going to have to write about things you don't care about. But yeah, so technically, I think by the law of College Board, if they have done an assignment in which they have received teacher feedback in the past, they may not use that for the performance task. So interpret that how you will. I don't work for College Board, so I don't know. But the other thing is the mock gradings from last year, or not the mock gradings, the student examples. I think those are excellent scaffolding activities that you can have your students do in class. Right now, it's awesome. On the College Board website, they have, I think it's 5 for the Explore performance task and 8 for the Create performance task that are graded, that are annotated with score notes. And what I would have my students do is score a task and then see how they did according to the real score the graders got, because College Board has provided all of the comments from the teachers, why they got the point, why they didn't get the point. And I feel like once students do 2 or 3 of those, they can truly understand how this grading works and what they should be doing and looking for as they're writing.
Great, thank you. Absolutely fabulous. There's one thing that somebody asked, which I'm going to answer and then let maybe Justin pick up on this. If the question is from Katie, I have the same question as Nicole. If we are practicing the Explore PT with lots of different innovations, can students not use any of these topics for their real Explore PT? The answer from College Board is a student cannot submit for the College Board exam a performance task on which they have received feedback. And feedback is graded assignments. So use your discretion. What kind of feedback would you give? When you do your scaffolding activities, you have to be careful. We don't want to exhaust the very, very popular ones that will help our students score well, but we still have to train them. And the other question that comes up in mind is when they do a practice, let's say there's a student who does Spotify. Another student works with that student on Spotify and sees the feedback. Now can student B go and work on Spotify? They haven't received feedback, but they certainly have seen the student's feedback, right? So these are definitely good conversations and something to absolutely think about before you do your scaffolding activities, and hence this question. Justin, would you want to take some further,
that's related to that? So I think you were talking, Deepa, about a performance task that was already submitted and graded, perhaps. But there's if you look at the CED on page 76, there's a list of things that teachers may not do. And the 4th one is allow students to submit computational artifacts from the practice performance task. So the things that are actually happening in scaffolding activities, for examples, like the whole class may be doing it, you know, those things can't be submitted exactly as done, obviously, from there. So I think there's got to be great care in what the teacher actually selects. If there's a common innovation that the students are using collectively in scaffolding activities, you know, taking care to make sure that that's not going to be then submitted later.
Right, right, absolutely. Thank you, Jeff. That's extremely well said. And you know, that's where it becomes hard, is if we use a scaffolding activity for one innovation, that's great. But what if we have scaffolding activities where we do let students go and explore and pick up various innovations? Then what happens? How much feedback should we then give them, knowing that we see that they're at the end of the tunnel, they have to use them? Maybe we don't give much feedback, right? Don't grade them, don't answer them, just tell them, yes, that's a valid innovation, and because, can you answer the problem? Go think, and leave it open-ended so that they have an opportunity to jump back on that.
Yeah, that's Justin? What I would say. When I graded these Tech News the students all knew they were getting full credit. The only way they would actually miss credit is if they didn't do the 2 sentences. It was really and truly as an opportunity to discuss each prompt in class, and what are good ways to answer the prompt and what are bad ways to answer the prompt. And I rarely had them actually create the artifact that goes with the innovation. So I don't know that, and I mean, we can get, I guess, nitpicky, but the the innovation itself, just because it's a student task, like so they pick smart driving cars or whatever, um, that's not out. They can still choose it. It's the topic's not off limit. It's the way if it was done and turned in. So if you guys did a complete mock performance task in which they answered the questions as they should, they created the artifact as they should, they turned it into you, graded it, and handed it back to them, that is completely off limits. But I mean, I guess hypothetically, they could take that same topic and twist it completely around and create a new artifact for it. I don't know. That's kind of scary. I didn't have any of my students pick something that they had previously turned in because of my push for, they're just trying to understand the questions. This is not practice for them to actually get some work done early. It's just so they can understand what the questions are really asking.
Thank you, Justin. A couple of really good questions that have come up in the chat window. Resources, I believe the innovation can be as old as it needs to be, but yes, just the references that are used, 2 of them have to be within the year and the others have to be recent as well. The other question that was really, really very good one that I'm going to put it up to the panelists to tell us, and it kind of leads up to the next question, but I'd like to go ahead and give it to Matt and Kristen, who have asked it here. Do we know of cool programs or apps to make these artifacts? Any good ideas? Audience, if you can put stuff there as well. And
well,
Justin,
I was just going to
like
jump in real quick on Nicole's question because I think there's some misunderstanding there. Nicole asked, does anyone use sentence stems to help students write? I would discourage that, primarily because I remember 2 or 3 distinct times that we had sentence stems that started the explanation or the prompt and whatever we were grading, and because the stem was there and it was not the students generated work, it was considered plagiarism, and so we automatically chunked that out. So I would be very careful on using sentence stems. If they're just writing and then they rewrite it or whatever else, that's fine. Or, instruct them on how to do it or have them do it on a dry erase board. But there was several that had in like green font the words that the sentence started with and then went from there. I'm not saying, Nicole, you can't do it. I'm just saying you need to just make sure that that is not apparent in the submission. So, and also keep in mind that grammar's not graded, spelling's not graded. I mean, as long as we can tell what the ideas are, they get credit if they have obtained the task. So yeah, I just want to jump in on that. But then I saw someone put Picto chart. I really like that one. I think it does some great infographics.
Right. And I just clicked on that link that Rebecca Lang sent, and there is a slew of ideas for that. I've just been giving my students a test, and I came across several new ones. Powtoons is a very popular one, and then Picture Chart. Anything that helps them do an infographic or a collage seems to be very, very popular. Jeff, any thoughts on that? On any tools that you know of that students can use to create digital artifacts?
I just also clicked on the resource, the link that Rebecca provided, and the 2 or 3 that I had in mind are already there. So I think that's probably a really good place to check. There's like almost 45 or so tools. I don't really have any thing that would do. Yeah.
Great. Yes, right. Um, so we've talked extensively about these prompts, truth be told, but again, just to maybe give a chance to discuss this a little bit more, um, any, I'd like to just start with this and then pass this on to Justin. Um, it seems to me, listening to Jeff a bit, and Jeff, please correct me if I'm wrong, innovation really focuses on the data aspect, the storage, the transformation, the input, and the output. And then Justin was saying, when we look at benefits and harm, understanding the impact from a short term to a large term, right? That is hard to keep and really try and answer the question, so how was the impact? And one of the people in the audience said, let's not just understand, think about this. It's very easy to come up with the benefits. Thinking of the harm is harder unless you know it's a virus. So Justin, let's start with you to have this really engaging discussion. Thoughts on prompts and which one's harder? How should students pay attention to them?
Let me see. I'm gonna throw in a link over here. It's to the Chief Reader Report, which I don't know if it's already. No, okay. So the Chief Reader Report, excellent resource. They actually talk a lot about why the students are not answering the questions as well as they should be. And so the prompt that seems to be the most difficult for my students was the data prompt, and really understanding what it was talking about. If this thing was consuming data or transforming data, what did that mean? Did it, eat up a bunch of ones and zeros and spit them back out? I think that is probably one of the more difficult things, along with what I said earlier. And Carol corrected me. They would say, so what? Like, why does that matter? So what? So what? So what? So I think having the students know their beneficial or harmful effect, going all the way out to how does this impact the world, society, culture, or economy, and the grand scheme of things, and the discussion around data.
Right, and there is one more resource out there, and there is also on the chat window is the Chief Reader's Report. I have to second Justin on that. I found that to be incredibly valuable as I was trying to get my head around what I needed to teach my students this year to get ready for the AP exam. Yes, John, to your point, what is answering the what really does seem to, and as I go through the my student responses this year, I feel no matter what innovation they take, they struggle. If they get the harm, they don't get the impact. If they get the impact, they struggle to the benefit or the harm. The data piece, the security, privacy is really hard because they don't have to be able to just say the security or privacy. They've got to say, they can't just say the security issue. Tell me more. What kind of security issue? And it has to be related to the data. So it's three pieces. Tell me exactly how it's a security problem or it's a privacy problem. How is it connected to the innovation, and how is it related to the data? Making it fairly significant in here. Jeff, any thoughts, closing thoughts?
Yeah, so there's a
before we move to the
resource
next
I'll
question?
share when we get to question 6. I think really helps with this, at least in my understanding. So when we're talking about the harmful effects that we see in C, it's always about what were the unintended consequences when the innovation itself was used as intended. So that case, like hacking and so on, usually is not the appropriate thing, has been mentioned in several other discussions on this. And then the data storage is looking at what are the risks if used in unintended ways, and so what's the way that it could be misused. So understanding the unintended consequences when it's used in the right way, and then also coming back and looking at the bad stuff from the way that it can be addressed or misused in risky ways.
Thank you, Jeff. That was like incredibly valuable. I honestly think even purely as a teacher, if I walked in here, this has been an incredibly useful webinar. I don't know who to thank here. Should I thank EIR? Should I thank Justin? Should I thank this absolutely active audience? Or should I thank Jeff? This has been amazing. Okay, let's start with you, Jeff. Good resources, the most exciting piece for us teachers, right? I don't know which we like more. Do we like stickers and pencils and papers more as teachers, or do we like more resources? The jury is out there on that. We just love to collect resources. So, Jeff, can you tell us more about that?
Yeah, so I think what I
one?
would suggest about resources in terms of helping students understand ways to pick computing innovations. So Justin mentions ACM Tech News, which is a great resource. If you can move over to the next slide, Deepa. If you haven't seen this video, this is, I think, a great one to show students early on about ways, things that they're interested in. So again, passions that they may have, whether it's fashion or medicine or life sciences to agriculture. This is a great 5-minute video where I think, the idea of the big idea of global impact, helping to drive the selection of computing innovations that are in a really interesting way. And an additional resource, we can go to the next slide. There's a project that some of you may know about, maybe not, but there's a project with UC Berkeley, and so Julia Byrne has led this. It's all about identifying global impact and teaching global impact, and I think that this way helps also to lead towards other computing innovations. So there's a lot of resources there. You can even go in and click on and filter like the Explore PT, and it'll tell you all of the resources that are on that website for helping to scaffold and helping to guide students into lesson plans that are for that purpose. And another one that we have, this is an example, and we've been using with some students in our own state. So if you can find examples in your own community, in your own state, I think those are also very helpful. Could we go back to the last slide just 1 second? The previous slide. Yeah, so at the
Last
very
slide? I'm
bottom,
sorry, hold on.
we worked with Alabama Public TV to find ways that computing is being used across our state. And in particular, Hudson Alpha is a genetics research think tank. And so that's a whole video about how computing is used in life sciences. So, a computing innovation would be how, software for genetic sequencing is bringing new kinds of clinical capabilities to doctors and other kind of benefits in that sense. So, that was just an example of tying something even to your own state or your own community. So on the next slide, just some general resources, and then many of you on this call probably already are aware of that, but of some of these. But some the suggested resources I would really recommend. I know that Justin could suggest some from UTeach. I think Chinma and Pauline are here from Mobile CSP. I'm sure they have some. The ones that I've been looking at are from code.org. So there's a bit.ly link there. So code.org has what they call the Explore PT Survival Guide, and there's 3 lessons for both teacher-facing and student-facing. They give an overview of preparing the students, helping them to understand Explore PT, and some other lessons as well as being able to go through. There's this teacher side and there's a student side. And what's really I found recently, one of our own colleagues here in Alabama, Jill Westerland, she and Gina McCarley have what's called the Abstracting CS website. Some of you may be familiar with. And Jill has been posting recently a few videos. So if you go to the website, the bottom here, this URL has Jill's blog, and she's been specifically talking about Explore PT in preparation for that. And she has like 5 or 6 minute videos on every one of the prompts. So recommendations for what she's done in her classes and how she's prepared students. So there's some videos there and some comments as well. So those are things I've just recently become aware of myself that maybe those on the call already are aware of those, but I just wanted to mention those. And the last slide I had, this is a general. If you're not aware of the CS teacher community, make sure you check that out. I know I recognize some names here that are on the call who post there regularly, and of course the CS for All teachers site. So those are just some resources from how global impact can influence Explore PT selection and elaboration towards some other resources from endorsed providers and just some general kind of resources you might want to check out.
This is amazing, thorough, detailed. Ladies and gentlemen, meet Dr. Jeff Gray. Justin, thoughts on that you can add on to this? I have one question that I want to quickly answer, and then I pass the baton to you. Somebody's asked, and it is abbreviated, so I don't want to pronounce it wrong. Does anybody have students submit a full-blown Explore task and grade them as way of prepping them? I do them in my class, and I have in the past held the National Math and Science readings where we do ask teachers to hold full-blown mock readings. Justin, from the you teach perspective and as a classroom teacher, and then Jeff, your thoughts as for CS Alabama, please.
I would agree with Jeff. Those are wonderful resources, and I think really all the curriculum providers have found a way to provide for their teachers. I'll post out. We have the You Teach student-facing curriculum. You take like a short survey, then you get access to the curriculum. Anyways, Unit 6. Unit 6 is a very cool, interesting way to do this performance task, a mock version of it, while covering the internet. But basically, the students are to create almost a Shark Tank talk about a futuristic computing innovation. So they make up the innovation completely. And with that, they answer the same questions that you do for the Explore performance task, but they're enabled to fictitiously make up this computing innovation, and they go and sell it to these judges. And I've brought in other teachers, I've brought in parents before, and basically we're the investors, and they have to prove to us, what benefits is this going to have for society? What harms is this really going to do? How is this data being consumed? Because we don't want to spend too much money on it. So I really love that unit out of the curriculum. The only other thing that I can add in is CodeHS, which is an online provider, had an article recently that they did, and they answer some questions. What are some good examples of projects for the AP-CSP Explore performance task? And I thought they explained it out pretty well. They did see a little bit of their stuff dated, right? Or R. Smythe. It was You Teach Computer Science Principles. The CodeHS, I thought provided a wonderful set of examples for really going through the Explore performance task.
Thank you. Wow. Folks, I actually do know from various other resources and people that I've spoken to, Justin has taken You Teach from being good to making it amazing. The thoroughness and the detail. Justin himself is a very detailed person, and sometimes I've wondered if I could be a fly on the wall and watch him teach in his classroom. And I have no doubts that if You Teach has such a strong reputation, Justin's had a very big hand on it. So we are really lucky to have been able to hear this firsthand from him. So thank you, Justin. Thank you, Jeff. We have about 5 more minutes for questions, and we have Stacy raised her hand. So Stacy, would you like to speak, please? Go right ahead. I think you might have to unmute yourself. Or you can put it in the chat window and I'm happy to read it for you.
Date restriction. I'm looking that one up. I don't think they've lifted the date restriction. I still think it's 2 years in the past that
Uh-uh.
they, like it has to be dated
Right.
at least 2 years. But this is only 2 articles. You're not talking about everything. You're not talking about your innovation. So if they truly cannot find an article that mentions their innovation that's dated basically June 15th and more, they may need to be considering something else. So, back to, oh, thanks, Nicole. Did
Yes.
Stacy, did she able to talk?
Right. Right. Yeah. I'm not sure. I wanted to.
I haven't heard about the date restriction either. I may have missed it, but some of us, I think, online here are also APSI facilitators, and I haven't heard anything come out from that.
Yeah. Right. I agree with you, John. It's just after the last academic year, 2 references have to be from May, after the AP exam, so kind of like May of 2017 to before the next AP exam, 2 references from there. That's correct.
Matt
Um,
Caulfield?
so can you guys still hear me?
Deepa, I hear you. I was going to jump in real quick on Matt Caulfield. They could write in bullets if they wanted to. The whole point of this is reaching equity. Having students, no matter what the language barrier is, no matter how well they write, conveying information and conveying their ideas to the readers to get credits for them. So I would say, well, not every single word bulleted, but, phrases, yes. I think that's a great idea.
Great. It is 27. Maybe we can take a question. I see Nicole typing, and then we can hand the mic back to Joey. But let me just see. I see 2 other questions here. It has been, yes, I agree with you, Nicole. It has been throughout. So I know that Joey is going to speak about this. We do have a blog on the CS for Teachers. And we encourage you to come there and let's increase the discussion there. We will put all these resources listed here in there, and then we will add more to it, and we can continue our conversation. The nice thing about in CS for Teachers over Facebook would be that we can go back year after year, and I can attest to you as a teacher that they show up really well. Their website has been designed well, so when you do a search, CS for Teachers resources come up much higher ranked than others. For whatever they do, they have designed it correctly. So, and at this point, before I just hand over to Joey, I wanted to just say my thank yous. I cannot thank Jeff and Justin enough. I have called them, emailed them repeatedly, I don't know how many times, hounded them to post it onto their connections because both of their connections are so deep and wide. And they have obliged me smilingly just because they wanted to serve the community. So we are really honored to have them out here. So thank you, thank you. I would be amiss if I didn't thank Joey. He was on phone calls with me, emails. I have to just click send on an email, and I would get an email back from Joey, thanking me, encouraging me, supporting me with ideas. And last but not the least, thank Melissa Raspberry, without which this community would not be where we are today, thrived, active, useful. We are really, really grateful to the IR for giving us such a fabulous platform for the computer science education community. Joey, I pass the baton to you.
Great. Thank you, everyone. Appreciate you taking the time in your busy schedule to do this. And one last thing, please share with your elementary teacher colleagues. We have a webinar this Thursday on Computer Science Education Week. And next week we've got a photo challenge for Computer Science Education Week. So follow the Twitter account, follow CS for All Teachers, and get more information. And lastly, when you close out, you'll get a link to a quick survey. And please just take 2 minutes to fill it out so then that we can get some really valuable feedback from all of you. I know there were some audio issues in the beginning. And we will update our blog post so that it has the PowerPoint. It's got a link to the video and everything else like that. But without further ado, thank you so much for joining, and I hope you all have a great rest of the night.
All right. Thank you, guys. Thank you, Melissa. Thank you, Joey. Thank you, Jeff. Thank
Not
you.
all.
Good night.
Good luck.
Night.